Good evening, friends, and welcome to this webinar on Small is Beautiful. So, today we have with us Ankit Agarwal, Fund Manager, UTI Mutual Fund. Ankit has been with the fund management industry for over the last 12 years. So, he has expertise in mid and small cap companies. So, today Ankit will speak about UTI Small Cap Fund. So, Ankit, we were discussing about Sensex at new highs, Nifty at new highs. In fact, RBI has also revised its GDP growth expectation number. So now the question is the market overheated or correction is around the corner, or market will touch new highs in the coming days?
So, I mean, we are today at lifetime highs. And, my simple point to that is that if you're looking at equity asset class from a longer term perspective, in your journey from today to your, investing, life cycle, you would see this lifetime highs multiple times in your, investing life cycle. And you have to welcome it because unless and until Sensex makes new highs every time, you would not see those desired IRRs in your portfolio. So clearly, I think it's a welcome point that, Sensex is at lifetime highs. The way to look at it is more from an asset allocation perspective, right? So today, probably, if you look at the larger caps, there the price to book, as a valuation metric is towards the higher side. So maybe you could, shift some allocation over there. But if you look at the small cap index, there the valuations are actually close to fair valuation, and that is also on a depressed earnings base, right? So my sense is that if you look at it from more long-term investing and think of it from asset allocation perspective, and if you're looking for a slightly higher return, then certain allocation to a small cap focused opportunity makes sense. And therefore, don't look at it purely from where the index is from, lifetime highest perspective. That will happen. The question that maybe you should ask is, what's going to happen? Will the earnings support this sort of, valuation re-rating that we have seen? So last 3-4 years has been mostly about valuations going up and earnings being sort of tepid as far as the index is concerned. Going ahead, probably the index earnings have to significantly expand to justify any up move from here. And that is where, what the companies are able to do and perform will be a driver of not only stock price performance, but also what the index does going ahead.
Raghu says that there is no voice. I guess we can hear Ankit clearly, loud and clear. Raghu, please, you can share whether you are getting voice or not. Okay, so there is a temptation, Ankit, there is a temptation among investors to book profit. Yeah, thanks. So there is temptation among investors to book profit. Since market is touching new high. So what distributors should tell their client in such a scenario?
No, so again, I would go back to the whole asset allocation argument and say that, if you are over indexed to equities today within your broader asset allocation, then to shift some of that out and, put some money in cash or, some of the safer asset classes is a fairly prudent choice to make, right? So I'm saying that you can use, valuation as an anchor to make those asset allocation decisions. But will you suddenly make your asset allocation to zero? You will come down, so maybe your on an average basis, your risk appetite basis, the age that profile that you will have a steady state asset allocation where you'll put a certain amount on equities, certain amount in debt, certain amount in some of the other alternate classes. When the index moved up, you would maybe shift some of that into maybe, so from equity, maybe you may go into debt, but you'll not reduce your equity completely because you don't know, where till what level the markets can continue to move. So therefore, think of it from an asset allocation perspective. If you're heavily over-indexed to equities and you're suddenly as a proportion of your portfolio has gone up, there is perfectly reasonable to book some profits in. And within that equity asset class also, if you're looking at large caps versus mid and small caps, and if you believe that the relative valuation today is more attractive in one segment, that coupled with a possible broader economic recovery going ahead in a low interest rate environment, then you can make a case for even shifting some of the allocation into small and mid caps. So again, I would say that instead of looking at it whether I should get in or get out, the question should be, how is it, distributed from an asset allocation perspective, and there, where can I shift this asset allocation within different asset classes? I think that will be an easier decision to make rather than saying that whether this is a great time or not.
Okay, it's like rebalancing the portfolio.
Yeah.
Yeah, to adjust their asset allocation depending.
And you're right, use the valuation as an anchor to do that, and that's perfectly fine.
Great idea, Ankit. So my next question is about Indian economy. So the Indian economy has started to recover from the pandemic, including wars. In such a scenario, would it be premature to conclude at this stage that the economy has turned the corner?
So clearly, the trough that we saw in the Q1 of this financial year, every month after month, we have seen recovery in the operating performance of companies and general macroeconomic data also. And so much so that, even post Q2, whatever interactions we have seen that continued trend playing out. Now, the question that still needs a little bit of understanding, and that we'll come to know over a period of time, that how much of this was pent up in nature and how much of it can sustain going ahead. So there is clearly some amount of pent up component, but there is also indication that it may sustain in future. So I would say that it's a mixed bag to that extent. But two trends which were very clear and also in the operating performance of companies were, number one, that the competitive intensity has reduced, which means that the smaller, weaker players, and so to say the unorganized segment, that has become much weaker, and the larger organized players have become much stronger. So they have gained market share, pricing pressures have reduced, discounting has reduced. So that clearly emerges. Second point which clearly emerges is that companies have used this period to really cut costs, reduce the flab, improve productivity, reduce overhead costs. Travel costs was a very high cost in a lot of businesses. Today we are doing this NFO sitting at our homes. Otherwise, in a normal scenario, you would be traveling from one city to the other, and a lot of costs would have been incurred. Companies are cutting costs, and part of that, obviously some of it will come back when things revive, but part of it will remain. So what you will see going ahead is that if the revenues come back even to the levels that we saw last year, the expansion on operating profit will be much higher. And considering we are in a low interest rate environment, the impact that you could see on the bottom line will be significantly higher. So we are actually today setting ourselves for a much higher earnings expansion going ahead. And those are the key insights that we get, that the trends that we were observing previously, which were slow, have suddenly expedited. And I think that is the positive I'll take away from what we have seen in the last few months. But whether the broader economy has it recovered fully, maybe it has to some extent, but you need to still see that trend continue before you can make a final judgment on that.
Okay. So Ankit, we have seen equity market to be celebrating this time around in economic growth. So do you see mid and small cap doing better than large cap companies in the days ahead?
Yeah, so I mean, that is our hypothesis, that in a lower interest rate environment, and typically the cost of funding for some of the mid and small cap companies is higher than the large cap companies, and therefore the benefit of a lower interest cost environment at the margin is more beneficial to mid and small cap companies as compared to large cap companies, because large caps are anyways operating at a much lower cost of capital. So that definitely is a benefit for them in a lower interest rate environment. And secondly, even the trends that we observed, where the smaller companies in the more organized space are gaining market share. Again, the similar trends are very visible in the mid and small cap space, because a lot of the industries that they operate in are highly unorganized or have a very high unorganized component. So I think both these trends mean that going ahead, the scope for earnings expansion in mid and small cap when a broader economic recovery is playing out is much higher, and therefore gives you a lot more conviction that with the broader economy revives, you could see the mid and small caps to outperform the larger cap peers.
Okay, but how comfortable are you with the valuations in the small cap space?
So I mean, again, if let me go back to the valuation metrics we are looking currently, and earnings-based valuation metrics may be a little difficult to look at today because the earnings picture is quite distorted. So we look at slightly more stable valuation metrics like price to book. And if I look at that, then today we are close to the fair valuation. So if you look at it from a long-term basis, we are probably closer to fair valuation. So we are maybe not as attractive as we were maybe at March, April, May level, but we are not anywhere close to the expensive levels that we were in 2017. So I think we are midway over there. Probably the driver for, again, the driver for stock price performance going ahead will be earnings expansion. So we are not in any frothy territory as far as price to book is concerned. And in fact, if I look at a dividend yield as a metric, we are in fact in a fairly favorable territory over there. So if I combine these two, I would say that we are at a reasonable level as far as valuation is concerned. And if the earnings expansion happens, then that will actually drive stock price performance. And if you look at it from a 3-year, 5-year perspective, there is a significant room to catch up vis-a-vis the larger cap indices.
Okay. So what are the major triggers and key risks you foresee in the small cap companies right now?
So triggers again, so the key trigger would be earnings expansion. So, the hypothesis rests on the fact that competitive intensity has reduced. The benefits that we have seen on cost reduction part of it will sustain. And if that translates into a EPS expansion, that itself will be a key trigger for the small and mid caps to continue to outperform. And, sitting today, probably will not be able to even guess the earnings expansion that could happen because that could be substantial, especially, on the low base that you're sitting on today. So that is the key trigger. I think the risks that exist in this space are again, risks of execution, risks of, significant increase in the, interest rates. Risk could come from, stock specific risk could come from companies that operate in this segment, right? So I think the risk of investing in small caps comes also from the fact that you are present in a segment where product concentration is much higher, geographic concentration is much higher. You are a promoter driven organization, so you do not get quality managerial talent. So risks actually are more specific to companies that you buy in this segment because they are at the end of the day much early in their business cycle. So company specifics are a lot more important to understand here rather than more macro risks which could impact them. So there are definitely risks of investing in the small cap space, but you can mitigate some of those by having your stocks selection right.
So talking about sectoral allocation, so which are the sectors that look promising in the small cap space, and which are the top 5 sectors you would allocate your funds to in UTI small cap fund?
So see, we follow a very bottom-up approach to investing when it comes to the small and mid-cap space, right? So we don't take a top-down view. So I don't look at sectors and say that, these sectors are looking great, so let me go overweight, underweight these sectors, and then start looking for bottom-up opportunities. I look at bottom-up opportunities, and my sectoral exposure today is purely a summation of these bottom-up opportunities that I have in my portfolio. I only look at top down from a more risk management perspectives to see that, how am I over indexed to a particular theme or opportunity. But otherwise, my focus is to look at stocks, single stocks, understand their business, look at their long-term growth opportunity, understand the promoter, understand their vision, and then take a call on these stocks. Having said that, if you look at the portfolio today, probably you'll find a lot more opportunities in spaces like chemicals, certain agri-focused themes. You'll find opportunities in the consumer discretionary space. You'll find a lot of opportunities in probably building materials, construction space. You'll also find opportunities in certain select industrial space. So it is, a mix of some of these sectors, and that's where we. But at the end of the day, we don't look at it from a sectoral allocation perspective, but look at it from, with whether this stock will do well or not. What's the investment hypothesis for that particular opportunity.
Okay. So Ankit, we all understand that small cap companies are less liquid and very risky compared to large and mid cap counterparts. So in such a scenario, what are the risk mitigation strategies that you will deploy in the fund?
No, you very rightly pointed out that there are certain risks inherent in the segment that you are investing in, and the only way, so the only way of risk mitigation is having your stock picking right. So stock selection becomes, and following a strong investment process becomes a key cornerstone of reducing the risks in this segment. So you need to, you need to have a much stronger research team, who are looking at these companies, doing the channel checks, kicking the tires, trying to understand what drives the business, how they're interacting with their different stakeholders. And once you get a complete understanding of that and the integrity and the vision of the promoter, then you go ahead and buy these opportunities in your portfolio. So clearly, stock picking and stock selection is a very important way by which you mitigate the risks in this sector. Secondly, in the portfolio construction, the way you manage it is twofold. So you have a fairly diversified portfolio where not only do you sort of reduce risks from a stock specific perspective, but you also reduce liquidity related risk. So you don't want to be in a scenario where you are overexposed to a given stock, and therefore if you exit that stock, you see a significant impact cost in the portfolio. So you want to maintain a more diversified portfolio, and then you also want to do your size your positions appropriately. So based on your relative conviction in an idea, and combined with what is the market depth available, what's the liquidity available, you can size that position appropriately to benefit, to manage that risk in your portfolio. So these two, factors basically will help you mitigate most of the risks which are present in the small cap space.
Okay. And how many number of stocks would you, pick up in the portfolio?
So broadly, we are looking at, having 60 to 70 stocks in the portfolio, which gives you, adequate representation in the small cap space, yet gives you that diversification that you need to have in your portfolio.
Okay. And Ankit, so there are almost 4,800 stocks in the small cap stocks as per AMFI's list. So how will you separate wheat from the chef? For the fund.
Right. So again, I'll go back to the fact that you need to have a very strong investment process to do that. And, if you look at our investment process, we have a very high focus on two parameters, which form the core pillars of the investment process. One is, what is the return on capital that the business generate? What is it generating today? What is the possibility of it to generate in future? So return on capital is important because not only does it create shareholder value, but companies which generate high return on capital can reinvest that money into the business and grow further. And secondly is operating cash flow. So at the end of the day, P&L is great only to the extent that, you are able to generate good operating cash flow from that business. So these two become a cornerstone or pillar for my investing process. And therefore we have very core focus on some of these. And then apart from that, you obviously look at softer aspects also, where you are looking at management quality, looking at, channel checks, kicking the tires, like I said again, which gives you that ability to identify that it's really a, good business or, whether, this is a lower quality business and maybe you should avoid it.
Okay. So Ankit, when would you decide that? I mean, when would you exit a stock? I mean, what is the point when you decide that you should sell this stock?
Right. So one, as a, a prudent portfolio management approach, you would do as part of your risk management also, whenever you see valuations becoming, fairly expensive in an idea, but you still want to hold on to it because, there is a longer term, growth trajectory. You would book some profits and you would maybe size that position, like position sizing becomes important. So you size that position specifically if you own something which is more cyclical in nature and you expect that, that business can go through a certain downturn in future. So that is, one. Second, the easier one is where, you see some negative development happening maybe on the governance front, or, some development happening in the sector where on a structural basis, you see that your investment hypothesis is impaired. There you immediately take a call to exit the stock in your portfolio. And thirdly, if you have, a great opportunity which has come up, and purely from a relative opportunity perspective, you have to exit because, you don't hold a huge amount of cash in your portfolio. If from a relative basis, you find an opportunity which is much better than what you are currently holding in your portfolio, you could take a call to, exit the stock in that scenario. So these three are probably, the reasons where you would trim or exit a stock in the portfolio.
Okay. So Ankit, a few fund houses have restricted lump sum flows in their small cap funds due to inadequate opportunities in the small cap space. So in such a scenario, why do you believe that this is the right time has come to launch UTI small cap fund?
No, I think clearly from a size perspective, we are just in the NFO phase, and we don't believe that we have reached that size where, the opportunities available in that segment are not there, and therefore we may take a call to restrict. So I think in future, whenever we reach that stage where our size becomes large enough that we need to take a call to restrict inflows, I think we'll take that call then. Or if we believe that the valuations have become too frothy for any fresh inflows, at least lump sum inflows coming in, probably we'll take that call then. But now we don't believe that that we are that size, and we also believe that there are enough opportunities available in the market today to benefit our investors from a 3 to 5 year horizon. Secondly, and purely from an asset allocation perspective, it makes sense to have a certain allocation today to a small cap fund, especially because valuations are closer to fair value. And therefore, it does make, if you're looking for a slightly higher yield and you understand the risks in the segment, then there is a case to have a certain allocation to a small cap fund. And lastly, if you look at it, from our investment process perspective, the benefit of that investment process we have seen across our funds. So there is a case, and this is after the SEBI recategorization, where the flexibility to a lot of the funds has greatly reduced, but we have still been able to show quartile 1, quartile 2 performance in a lot of our funds, which follow fairly different strategies. So therefore, our sense is that the investment process is working, the proof of that you're already seeing in some of the other strategies. And if you follow that investment process also in the small cap fund, you should be able to deliver that similar performance also in that scenario. So therefore, in all these cases, it merits coming out with the small cap NFO, and therefore giving that exposure to our investors who weren't able to get that exposure within the UTI umbrella of funds.
So Ankit, how is UTI small cap fund different from existing small cap funds?
Right. So 2-3 aspects again. So number one, we are a true to label fund. So when I say true to label, which means that all exposure will be in small cap, mid cap companies. We would not at the time of investment invest in any large cap companies. So that's a very clear focus that we want to give our investors complete exposure to the small and mid cap space. So that is one. Secondly, from a diversification perspective, we want to be slightly more diversified because we believe the stock specific risks in this segment are on the higher side. And also you need to manage the liquidity risks. So in the mid cap segment also, we have a similar approach where we manage it as a more diversified portfolio. And the similar approach we want to keep in the small cap fund also. And thirdly, the investment process, like I said, the investment process has shown that they, it delivered across different strategies, which follow a very different mandate. And therefore, if your strategy is working across, different funds, our belief is that that itself gives you an advantage, to look at the UTI small cap fund, because we are going to use the similar strategy over here also. So I think the benefit that we have got across, we want to also translate it into the small cap fund. And that gives us, makes us, unique in that respect, as far as the small cap fund is concerned.
Okay. And why do you think MFDs should recommend UTI small cap fund to their investors? I mean, if you have to point out 3 key reasons.
So one, so clearly from an asset allocation perspective, it makes sense to have a certain allocation, because if you're looking for higher yield, and if you are going to a good, advisor who can choose these stocks for you, it makes sense to have a certain allocation over there. So that is, one, why you should have it. You should basically UTI as a house has very strong research and investment processes backed by very strong risk management processes. So while we are in a riskier segment, but within that, we have a lot more conservative approach, when it comes to investing in the small and mid cap space. Therefore, that similar conservatism will also sort of bring it over here. So you look at delivering you a reasonable amount of return without taking significantly higher risks. And that basically becomes an important reason why you should look at the small cap fund. And we have seen that we have looked at the mid cap fund. There is a track record to that. There is a long experience of the team members because of UTI's pedigree and their long track record. They have seen there is a knowledge base sitting over here, which will also help you, to make these right decisions when it comes to picking up in this space, because stock picking is very key. And there again, with this strong research and investment process, I think that will also help people to make money in the longer term. So I think that's those are the reasons I would say why someone should look at this NFO.
Okay. Ankit, so many people say that small cap gives extraordinary returns in the long term. But 10-year data shows that small cap funds have delivered at par returns with large and mid cap funds. So why do you think that investors should take high risk to earn at par returns?
No, so clearly, I think a part of the underperformance that you're seeing from a long-term basis is also clouded by what we have seen in the last 3-4 years, where clearly small cap index have significantly underperformed your large cap and mid cap indices. And that's sort of pulling down the longer term returns too. My simple submission there is that, on an index basis, probably you are seeing that benefit not play out. But if your stock selection is right, and that's where, if you look at the performance of different companies in the Nifty 500 index, which are the possibility of multi-baggers in the small cap segment is high. But the wealth destroyers are also much higher in the small cap segment. But if your stock selection is right, your ability to target a lot more opportunities in the multi-bagger sort of territory will be higher as compared to and you would avoid companies in the sort of wealth destroyer category. If you can do that on a more consistent basis, you should be able to do significantly better in the long term and justify the risk that you are taking by getting into this segment. So again, I would say that stock picking actually becomes very key to justify a higher return for the higher risk that you are taking in this segment.
Okay. So before asking you the next question, I would like you to, throw this question to our, participants first. So guys, I wanted to understand that. What works well in small cap according to you, lump sum or SIP? You can use the chat section. SIP, SIP, lump sum now, SIP. Okay, both. So, Ankit, as you can see clearly, SIP is the winner. So, what is your view? I mean, which
No, clearly,
strategy?
and yeah, clearly an SIP strategy definitely, does work well, especially in the mid and small cap segment, because the volatility is slightly on the higher side in this segment. So, in order to be able to benefit from significant up moves, down moves in this segment, you should use SIP as a route, because that will also reduce the long-term volatility that you see in the portfolio. So an SIP approach uh, will sort of reduce that volatility even in the small cap segment. So anyone who is sort of a little bit wary of seeing a lot more volatility can use the SIP route. I think the way to anchor some of the lump sum investment is again to anchor it to valuation. And therefore, if you ask me today, because you are at that fair or closer to fair valuation, you can do it as a part lump sum, part SIP. I think if you were in a more attractive valuation, you could have done a lot more lump sum. And if you go slightly on the expensive side, then you do a lot more SIP. I think that's how you can sort of broadly even distribute it, what would make sense at what point in time.
Okay, so Padmanabhan is saying that lump sum is not recommendable at this time. What do you say?
No, I think it's, see, at the end of the day, you don't know. I mean, at least we have no expertise to predict where the markets will be in 6 months of time, right? What we can do today is find the good ideas and hold them for long term. So do that due diligence, find the right companies for you, make sure that we understand the opportunity size, make sure we understand the promoters well, and then hold them in the portfolio and then hold it for longer term. If you are able to time the market, that's great. I mean, if you take a SIP approach, thinking that maybe the markets will correct in the next 3-6 months, that's great. I mean, but my simple submission is, I mean, can you say with conviction that the small cap index cannot move 15-20% from here? I mean, no, I mean, you can't really say that, right? So the only way, again, to do a more measured decision is to anchor it to maybe a metric like price to book. So from a price to book perspective, if I say today we are at long term, closer to long term averages, so a combination of lump sum and SIP will make sense. If you were a little bit more on the expensive side, then SIP would have made a lot more sense. If you were more on the cheaper side, a lump sum would have made a lot more sense. But to say that one specific approach will definitely work, and that too in the next 3-6 month period, at least I don't have the expertise to give that confidence that this is the right approach to take.
Right. In fact, Mr. Anand Kumar is saying that did anyone guess that today we will reach 45K? So every day it can be the new highs, right? We
Right.
cannot predict the market, and in the long term, it will definitely go up.
Right.
Yeah. So Ankit, talking about the time horizon. So what is the ideal time horizon one should look at for investing in small cap funds?
See, definitely you should have a longer term horizon. I would say a 3 to 5 year horizon is where you can see the complete benefit of maybe a business cycle playing out. Companies are able to sort of grow their business significantly, and that compounding really leading to some amount of wealth creation. So clearly, you have to have a 3 to 5 year holding period, and that sort of appetite to really see the benefits of investing in the small cap universe.
Okay, and what percentage of one's investment portfolio should be in small cap funds?
So I think so let me put it this way. If I look at the Nifty 500 index, and if I look at the proportion of small caps within that index over the last many years, it has ranged anywhere between 4% to 8%, right? Now, so that gives you a benchmark number. Now, basis someone's risk appetite, where he is in his sort of investment cycle. If the person is much younger and is willing to take a little bit more risk versus someone who is slightly older and is willing to take less risk, you can go overweight, underweight this number. So someone who is a little bit more aggressive, is willing to take slightly higher risk, understand the volatility in this segment, maybe go beyond 8%, may go a little bit higher than 8%. Someone who's a little bit more conservative may go closer to that 4 to 5% number. I think that will give you some sort of an indication as to where you can anchor your allocation in your portfolio.
Okay, so one last question, Anand, before we open up the floor for the questions. What kind of alpha, should investors expect from small cap funds 10 years down the line?
It is difficult for me to comment on what sort of alpha you can expect. The only thing which I can sort of endeavor to do within the fund is, one, try to beat the benchmark on a consistent basis, and B, try to be in the quartile 2, quartile 1 of performance from a peer performance perspective. And, to tell you frankly, that's where my sort of incentives are also aligned to. So, my focus is without taking too much risk in the portfolio. See, you can create alpha in the portfolio with, more and more risk that you can take in the portfolio. So, we don't also want to be in the camp where we are taking unnecessary or inordinate amount of risk in the portfolio. So we want to be a little bit more conservative, yet provide the benefit of growth that we see in the small cap segment. So my two objectives would be to look at beating the benchmark, and secondly, to be in the quartile 2, quartile 1 of performance as far as the peer group performance is concerned. So as long as I can do, attain these two objectives without taking too much risk, I think I would have, achieved my goals that I have set for myself.
Okay. So guys, I'm requesting you to post your question in the Q&A section. So we'll try to answer as many as questions. So I'll start with the questions which I have received on email today. So Mr. Senthil Kumar wants to know which sector is beautiful in small cap space.
So I again would say that, we don't focus our investment strategy from a top-down perspective. So, I don't look at, which sectors are necessarily great to invest in. Let me start finding opportunities from there. I look at opportunities as is, how is this opportunity today, and, how will it benefit in the long term? Are the sectoral tailwinds there for the companies to benefit? That's how I broadly look at it. But if you ask me today, what's your broader sectoral allocation looking like, then you will see a lot more companies which are in the consumer discretionary space. You'll see a lot of companies which are in the chemical space. You'll see a lot of companies which are in the building materials, construction space. You'll see a lot of companies which are, in the rural agri space. So, so that's some of those sectors which I would say we are broadly finding good opportunities to invest.
Okay. So Mr. Padmanabha says, he asked question, many people have opinion that only STP route for at least 6 months from now is recommendable in mid and small cap funds. What do you say?
No, like I said, my ability to predict what's going to happen 6 months down the line is, you can say, absolutely zero, right? I don't claim any expertise over there. And frankly, we don't even focus on, predicting what's going to happen in the next 3-6 months time. Having said that, I would say SIP, STP approach are great ways of putting money in the market, because you get the benefit of different levels, which might happen. And, if there is any volatility, you will get benefit of that. But having said that, is that the best approach, or that's the only approach to do? I'm not sure, because I don't know where the index levels will be in the next 6 months time. If they see sort of a 6-month secular move, probably SIP will not be a great strategy to put money in. Maybe a lump sum today would be a better strategy to put money in. The only way by which I can make some sort of an educated guess is to look at where the price to book multiples are, or where the valuation multiples are. And if I look at the valuation multiples, they are broadly in the fair value zone. And therefore, I would say that a balanced approach where you have part in lump sum, part SIP makes maybe some sense to me, rather than looking at it only, rather than saying purely lump sum or purely SIP. Beyond that, it's up to you. I mean, it's, whatever gives you comfort. But at the end of the day, lump sum investor and SIP investor is looking 3 years down the line. What happens in the next 3-6 months hopefully shouldn't matter that much to his longer term return. As long as you are focusing on that 3 to 5 year horizon, both strategies should converge to similar sort of levels in the future.
Okay, so one anonymous attendee is asking, will the fund collected be invested on a staggered manner over 3 to 5 months, since there has been run up in the small cap stocks?
No, so I mean, we don't get, actually as per SEBI, we are mandated to reach the desired asset allocation within 1 month, which means that the majority of the small cap that I would be investing in, I have to invest within 1 month of the closure of the NFO. So 65% of the asset, which is in minimum small caps, has to be invested within 1 month. So there is no question of staggering it beyond that, at least for whatever small caps that I would be holding in my portfolio.
Okay. So Ashok wants to know any weightage given to ESG parameter while you select stocks.
No, so I mean, ESG parameters would be more from the softer aspects, when you look at companies, and the way you focus on ESG is where you look at companies, are they following the best practices? Because at the end of the day, if they're following the best practices with respect to environment, governance, that automatically gets reflected in the way that company performs. For example, a lot of chemical companies, they have to be much more environmentally compliant today, because a lot of their clients are overseas clients. A lot of clients are MNC clients. So they'll expect these companies to be much more environmentally compliant. So we don't look at ESG as or let me put it this way, that we look at ESG as one of the parameters or one of the aspects which goes into your decision making, but it's not a hard and fast, number that you look at when you make your investment decision.
Okay. So Prakash Bishnoi wants to understand your view on Indian economy 3 years from here.
I'm sure if I could predict that, I'll be more of an economist rather than, market participant. See, my approach again is more stock specific in nature. Let me reiterate, I don't have the capability, nor do I try to try to guess where the markets are going to be in the next 3 to 6 month horizon. Neither, do I spend a lot of time in really understanding where the economy is going to be in the next 3 year period. I am trying to find companies which in a relatively okay economic, they have their own structural drivers which do not depend on where the economy will be in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line, which means that these companies have inherent business opportunities which will drive shareholder value. And therefore I need to invest in these businesses. And hence, I'm not really concerned about where the economy will be in the next 2 to 3 year time. If the economy does well, maybe I'll get much more benefit. All boats rise, so this boat will also rise. But I don't really worry about where the economy is going, because I understand that the business that I own will grow, because the opportunity that they are looking at is significantly larger. And therefore, it makes sense to buy these businesses. We don't really invest in companies which are dependent on, broader economy doing well, or, they need significant, investment by the government to play out, for those companies to do well. You have to look at it from a stock specific perspective only. And a lot of these businesses may actually will be deriving their value from economies which are outside India. So a lot of your export driven businesses do not even really care about what's really happening within India. So, where the economy will be, maybe economists will be in a better position to answer that question. But my focus is purely on, buying the right companies for you and holding them for long term.
Okay, so one question by email. So how will you plan to reduce, liquidity risk, and what percentage of cash would you hold?
Yeah, so like I said in the earlier part of my presentation, that the way to manage some of the liquidity related risk is to have a diversified portfolio where you have around 60-70 stocks in the portfolio, and B is by position sizing. So you size these weight that you want to hold in that particular stock basis your relative conviction in that idea, and then combine with what's the market depth available. So those are the two ways by which you can reduce some of these liquidity related risks in the portfolio. Sorry, what was the next question?
Okay, so how much cash you would hold?
Yeah. So as a philosophy, we do not, and this is across the different funds within UTI, we don't take significant cash calls in the portfolio. So even if you look at the mid cap fund today, we are sort of in the last 3 months or so, we have been in that 2 to 3% range as far as cash is concerned. So we will not be taking significant cash calls in the portfolio. Maybe we'll hold that around that 2 to 3% is somewhere you can see as an interim cash which may be there at any given point in time.
Okay, so anonymous attendee wants to understand whether holding 60-70 stocks affect the fund performance or it reduces the risk.
No, so look at, I'll just ask you to look at the performance of the mid cap fund. So there we are holding 60 to 70 stocks in the portfolio, in fact on the higher side, on the 70 side. And if you look at in the last 1 year, and this is in different periods, so the last 1 year we have seen markets going down significantly, and we have seen significant recovery happening in the market. And both these time periods, this fund has performed reasonably well. So you have in the downturn, we saw lesser drawdowns, and when the cycle moved up, we saw the portfolio participating. So I think purely portfolio diversification does not impact your stock price performance or your portfolio performance, as long as you're choosing the right stocks and you are in the right opportunities. So the focus has to be whether you are in the right stocks, right opportunities, right sectors, and your stock picking has to be obviously right for you to generate that higher alpha. Stock concentration on its own will not be a driver of alpha. In fact, stock concentration, if it doesn't work in your favor, can be a significant deterrent as far as alpha generation is concerned. So don't focus on purely, and we have most of our funds are fairly well diversified. Look at any UTI fund, it's fairly well diversified, and most of them are clocking quartile 1, quartile 2 performance. So, I would not say that diversification will lead to significant reduction in performance. It will depend a lot more on what are the type of opportunities you're buying in your portfolio.
Okay, so Vaishali wants to understand give an example of businesses that are not dependent on economy. I guess she's asking about small cap companies which are not very correlated with the growth in economic development.
So let me give you a very simple example. Look at chemicals as a space, right? The large part of the opportunity that the chemical companies are benefiting is from shift in global supply chains away from China to India, right? So historically, and the way the geopolitics is also playing out, historically, the dependence of any MNC agrochemical company on China used to be very high. Incrementally, if you see, the businesses are looking at a second source of supply. And therefore, when you look at, what are the second sources of supply in the chemical space, India actually comes at significant forefront, especially specifically in the specialty chemical space. So that, opportunity does not depend on what's going to happen in the Indian economy. That depends on how will that shift happen from China to India, and how the Indian companies are able to capitalize on that particular opportunity. So something like that, some of these opportunities can be not dependent on how the economy really does.
Okay, so Ashok wants to understand that whether he should recommend a fund with 3 or 5 year track record, or he should go with NFO. What is your view on this?
So I would say that the reason for looking at this NFO is that you already have a track record which is which is being shown in a lot of the other funds, including the mid cap fund, which basically means that the investment process that is being followed within the UTI team, that investment process works. That focus on return on capital, that operating cash flow, that works, which is getting reflected in large number of schemes within the UTI umbrella. And it's not restricted to just one or two schemes. And this is strategies which are widely different. So one strategy may follow a very different approach versus the other. So across different investment styles, we have seen good performance. So therefore, our sense is that that investment process works. So if you believe that that investment process works, and you believe in the risk management processes within the UTI umbrella, then you should hope that the NFO that is coming in should also provide you similar benefits. And an NFO which gives you more true to label exposure, gives you more diversified exposure, will definitely benefit from similar investment processes that have been working in some of the other funds. So, the track record is already there. You have to look at the track record of investment performance, investment process. This is, you're just bringing that same investment process in the small cap segment, which wasn't there earlier. So clearly there is a lot of merit in coming into an NFO too.
Okay. So since we are running out of time, I'll just ask 2 more questions. So stock selection criteria, can you explain stock selection criteria of the fund once again? And what ROCE of these companies and other metrics used for the stock selection?
Right. And so again, from an investment approach perspective, the way we look at companies is, a large part of my portfolio, almost 60 to 70%, I want to buy companies which are good quality businesses, which would be potentially leaders in the segment that they operate in. And that leadership could be because of, they are lowest cost producers, or they might do a lot of product innovation. They may have a strong brand, and that finally gets translated into high return on invested capital. So those will be, the core of the portfolio. You can think of them as compounders in your portfolio, which will compound earnings on a consistent basis over a period of time. So that forms around 60 to 70% of the portfolio. And the rest, 30 to 40%, will be good businesses, but maybe going through a temporary downturn because maybe the cycle is not in your favor. Maybe, there is some slowdown in that particular sector. And once that sector revives, you would see a disproportionate benefit, not only from an earnings expansion, but also from mean reversion playing out. So that is the other 30, 40%, which benefits from turnaround and transformation opportunities. The way the investment processes focuses a lot on return on capital and cash flow generation. Now, we sort of bucket our investment universe in 3 buckets: R1, R2, R3. R1 are companies which have 18% plus pre-tax ROCE. R2 is 10 to 18%, and R3 is less than 10%. We have done a lot of back testing with companies over a period of time, and we found that companies which are R1, say 5 years back, they continue to remain R1, 5 years hence. Almost 70% of them continue to remain R1 5 years hence. So there's a lot of persistency in performance. Therefore, companies which are good businesses continue to remain good businesses even in future. Second insight that we got was that companies which were able to migrate from this R2 bucket to R1, they generated significantly higher returns. Unfortunately, the proportion of companies which make this transition is small. Therefore, you need to be very picky about what companies you do pick in that R2 to R3 bucket. And that same philosophy then, lends itself into the segmentation, which will be, typically R1 will be those high quality businesses, and R2, R3 will be the ones where you want the turnaround to play out. So that's how we structure our portfolio, and that's how, we filter out stocks basis their long-term return and operating cash flow generation.
Okay, so one last question, Ankit, from Padmanabhan. How do you support your decision of launching NFO of small cap fund at this time? What are the factors that is favorable for small cap funds?
So again, this was basically a gap in our product portfolio, which was, there for quite some time. And this basically comes and fills up that product gap, which we had historically. From an asset allocation perspective, there is a clear case for investing in small caps. Like I said, small caps gives you a benefit of exposing yourself to opportunities which may not be there in the large cap space. So you may, a lot of sectors like chemicals, healthcare services, consumer durables, a lot of these segments are not present in the large caps. So small caps gives you an ability to take exposures over there and play certain niche sectors which you may not. So from a diversification perspective, from taking exposure in emerging sectors, small caps makes a lot of sense. They also have a higher potential to generate high returns purely because they are much early in their growth cycle. And as these companies compound their earnings over a period of time, you would also see your investments in them also compounding. So clearly from an asset allocation perspective, a small cap makes sense. As far as the risks concerned in that small cap segment, then you need to go to an advisor, to be able to do that, because you need a lot of due diligence to pick the right stocks and avoid losers. Hence, you need to come to a house like UTI, which has a strong, research team, has strong investment process to separate wheat from the chaff, and therefore buy the right companies in your portfolio. Hence, it makes sense from that perspective. And then when you couple that from where we are, from a valuation perspective, where small caps are still, underperforming the large caps, and there is a case for that to catch up as the broader economy revives, you would see that, small caps can actually outperform from here going ahead. Yeah. As long as you have sort of a 3 to 5 year horizon. All that combined makes a, strong case for having some allocation at least to your small cap portfolio.
With that, we have come to an end of this interesting session. Thank you so much, Ankit, for your valuable time and input, and all the best for UTI Small Cap Fund.
Thanks a lot, Nishant. Thanks a lot for that engaging conversation. Thanks.
And finally, thank you so much, all of you, for being with us. Thank you so much. Bye. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.